And welcome to our latest episode from SCY Studios. And again, I'm Jeff Slagle, the president and CBDO here at Scitalis. And I am super excited to have with me a friend and a colleague from across the pond, all the way over in Murcia, Spain, Dr. Antonio
Yep.
Skarmeta
Yes.
from the University of Murcia. Dr. Skarmeta has been heading up a very interesting project that is directly connected to sort of the new frontier with what's going to be happening with identity management, with online identity. And we're just really super excited to have him on the show and delighted to welcome him. So Dr. Skarmeta, if I can call you Antonio,
Antonio, please. Yes, please.
Yes, okay, fantastic. So Antonio, if you can you tell our audience just a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I mean, as already said, I'm full professor in the University of Murcia in Spain. It's in the southeast of Spain. Here is the Faculty of Computer Science, where I'm teaching. Basically, as already said, I have a PhD in basically in artificial intelligence. Indeed, I mean that was my origin, but then I have already evolved a little bit more on the networking area. In the security specifically, and now one of the main topic we are covering is about identity management and the evolution of identity management based on privacy preserving technologies, etc. By the way, just to make a small issue is that after so many years, I did my PhD in artificial intelligence basically in fuzzy logic. Now we are using some of these solutions indeed as part of the security research that we are carrying out in that sense. So I mean, everything comes again after some time, obviously.
It does. It sounds like that was awfully good preparation for where we're at today now as a world. So I wanted to, and I've already gone ahead, and those people that are tuning in with us today and that are watching this video already have kind of a general idea of what it is that we're going to be talking about. But I'd like to really delve into, and I'd like to start talking about this program or this project called OLYMPUS. And so if you can kind of let us know what exactly is OLYMPUS and where did OLYMPUS come out of?
Okay. Yes, perfect. I mean, OLYMPUS is an European project. This is funded by the European Union in the area of security specifically, and concretely on the topic of identity management or advanced identity management solution. And basically, OLYMPUS, indeed, I mean, the objective of OLYMPUS is how to go a step further on the existing identity management solution in order to provide tools in that sense for the users mostly, in order to facilitate some kind of privacy preserving mechanism in the way that they are able to share their attributes when they want to connect to service providers or to identity providers. No, so in some sense, as you know, specifically in Europe, there's a quite relevant, I was at work in order to increase the privacy preserving aspect or the privacy in general, if you like, no, on the communications. And one of the areas basically is how to facilitate. I would say that the end user could have more confidence on when they interact with the service provider with new solution, based on the idea that the user should be able to preserve or decide what information to be shared in some sense with the service or with the application in that sense. So in that sense, OLYMPUS that is focused on what we call Oblivious identity management solution. That's the name of OLYMPUS. In order to create privacy preserving solution for the identity management. No? That is the key idea behind. No? And in general, what we are trying to do is to create a collection of new novel approach on the crypto side that facilitate this privacy preserving mechanism, trying to also not affect, I would say, or simplify their introduction on the existing solution that already you can find on the identity area, I would say, in some sense. Yep.
Okay, so one of the things that sort of struck me in doing some of the preparation for today's interview, and obviously I have a little bit of an advantage in that I had the good fortune of actually being brought into a meeting or two on the good work that has happened inside of the Olympus project. But one of the things that struck me, and I don't know if you would agree with this, but were some of the parallels to some of the efforts that have happened in other parts of the world. For example, in the U.S., many years ago, we had something that was meant to kind of reform the way identity is handled online in cyberspace, and the program was called NSTIC. And NSTIC was the National Strategy for Trusted Identities in Cyberspace. And I know that one of the goals of NSTIC was this notion that a username and a password is broken. And you can't just lean into that and only that. And so that was sort of the bumper sticker, if you will, on where NSTIC kind of started. But I know that one of the long-term goals was this ability to have something that transcended sectors. And I think that in the EU, you may be using a different word, but it's a similar concept, that sort of this idea of cross-domain, that you want to be able to come up with something that has value, not just for government, not just for the private sector, but there's sort of this universality, if you will, to the benefits that it brings. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is one. I mean, here in Europe, I think the track has been a little bit similar in the sense, no. So in Europe has been a strong effort to introduce the electronic ID as a means to identity, as a means to support the identity of the user, basically at the end, with several countries, including Spain, no? Basically, where as part of our electronic ID, we already have a certificate that allow us to do operation with the different services, etc. But just in order to increase the security at the end, because it's true. I mean, you already have something that is really allow you to have a very strong security, for the service provision. But also in parallel, what is happening is that one of the handicaps, I would say, in some sense, for the end users is about use this kind of tools and this kind of electronic ID where they are not used to, in one sense, and in the second, I would say, is they are thinking that you have a big brother scenario, no, where the state or the government, in that sense, are a little bit tracking what you are doing in some sense.
Right.
So this is trade-off, I would say, of this kind of situation. And even in some countries, I mentioned this because, for example, in Spain has been one situation is that this oblige to the government either to create a solution that basically at the end is based on a login and a password, plus obviously second authentication using SMS and saying something. But anyway, but they already have been forced in some sense to say, okay, guys, the only way that we can really spread the possibility of using this kind of electronic administration is to make simple to the people to use what normally they are using when they connect to Facebook, on Google, that at the end is login a password. At the end, so basically that's the issue. So it's clearly an issue, no? I would say in some sense. So in some sense, in Olympus, what we already have tried is to be consistent with this approach in the sense that we understand that either using login and password, if you are able to create an infrastructure that is adequate, I would say, you can have a level of confidence, a high level of confidence, I would say in some sense. The main problem with the login and password has been that if the password are being stored on some database that later can be tracked, can be attacked, and in some sense they can be analyzed. Obviously, there's a big issue. No? So first, to facilitate a distributed infrastructure, so that at the end there's no way that the ISPs or the identity providers can have one point of attack, if you like, in some sense. So in that sense, we make more difficult, I would say, to get that information from a possible attacker. But at the same time, from the perspective of the infrastructure, we also allow the possibility to using not the login and password, but using, for example, in case of Europe, the electronic ID as a mechanism to authenticate the user at least in front of the service, I would say. And specifically in Europe, because now there is a regulation that is called ADAS, no? That basically is not forcing, I would say, but is pushing in the direction to have this strong authentication mechanism to be put in place by the service providers and the identity providers when they create and they engage with users. So I think that we are able to be in the trade-off scenario where we are supporting flexible mechanisms that can be relayed on a strong security authentication, but at the same time can facilitate in the ongoing process to use a more simple approach based on I would say not a login and password, but something that where the user is more used to use, I would say, in some sense, on his normal interaction, I would say. But anyway, as you mentioned, sorry, it is something very difficult because it's also the problem of the user perception, I would say, on how user really want to interact with the systems, and this is that is evolving, but it's evolving slowly than the technology, I would say, in some sense.
Right, but I mean, you would agree this does affect everybody. So I mean, as the world continues to move, and the movement is more and more online activity, more online transactions, and what I'm really talking about now is sort of this. We now have common, I believe we have, common terminology within identity management on, identity providers, people that are helping to sort out who people are, the actual people themselves, that are the object of whatever that activity is for proofing and vetting the individual, and then all of those relying entities that are out there. And what Olympus is aiming to do really affects everybody. It affects businesses. It affects government. It affects obviously the individual. And as you said, it's somewhat of a it's a balancing act where there are constraints that are in place that you're trying to be mindful of, while at the same time delivering on so many of the things that people are calling for. And I know that privacy is one of the really big ones, and a desire to make sure that people don't feel like they're being tracked and they're being monitored. And I know that appears to be more and more universal. I think in my travels, I've only encountered a few places on the planet where they don't really seem to care, but in they certainly care in Europe. They certainly care in North America, and I think that would be true in a number of other places. So, Antonio, can you talk a little bit about the connection or the integration to some of the other, common programs that are out there? Like, for example, can you talk a little bit about the connection to OIDC that Olympus has, and also to W3C? I think that there will be a lot of people that are tuning in right now that, those are familiar, and it would be nice to know, how does Olympus actually connect to those?
Yep. Thanks. But no, yes, this is exactly what of the point I mentioned about trying to provide solution that can easily be integrated, I would say, on existing infrastructure or deployment, I would say. No, so I think one of the main issues that we have from the beginning was that not to try to define a new and different, totally separate, I would say, framework that can be used. No, so it should be something that really enhance basically existing solution, but at the same time could be compatible or to be interoperable, if you like, with the existing solution in that sense. So in order to that, basically what we I think being the main objective of Olympus is to create this privacy mechanism, basically in two directions, because we wanted, in some sense, to make that the identity provider cannot, in some sense, support or provide the support of minimum disclosure information from the user in that sense when they want to give credentials and to manage interaction with different service providers, and also to provide unlinkability that I think is also some important part that the user are interested on, no? So that no service provider can, in some sense, be, as I already mentioned, big brother in some sense. So in order to do that, what we already have implement some specific, as I already mentioned, novel crypto approaches. One of them is called Pesto. Basically, it's an extension of existing solution, basically that try to facilitate the online interaction in a privacy preserving way. And the other one is what is called the distributed privacy attribute-based credential that we already manage, that is more on the facilitate of the process on the offline scenario, put it in that way. So basically, we want to have a solution that can be used by the end user in a classical online, but also, for example, in a situation where he can be not necessarily be connected to the internet, but basically he can be able to demonstrate certain kind of credentials in front of a service provider. Think about a vending machine, just to be very, very, very specific, I would say. But being able to decide what attributes to be presented, no, or to be demonstrated in some sense, etc. So in both the scenario, in the Pesto one and in the distributed privacy ABC technology, basically what we also wanted to, as already mentioned, not to be totally disconnected. So, for example, we already have been integrated the solution for example, in the case of the online with the OIDC, so that we can be, I would say, usage, but many of the existing service provider where they already are using these technologies. And in the case of the distributed ABC, of the offline case, if you like, we are now working more on the integration with W3C, where already have this kind of credentials that standardization work, so that you can also use it in a more general context, not necessarily in the one that we already envision as use cases. Because basically we have 2 use cases on our project where we are going to demonstrate. But obviously we don't want to stick only to these 2 use cases, but basically to be able to extend the solution once the end of the project, or either during the time that we have until the end of the project, on more broad scenario in that sense. So that is basically what we already have tried to do. So at the end, design a new solution that is provided advanced mechanisms for the privacy preserving support on the identity management, but at the same time that can be perfectly integrated on existing deployment that you can find with the identity management solution that already are quite well known and used on the real business, if you like, no, in the real market, I would say, in some sense. Now, has been our main approach. So in some sense, to hide from the perspective of the integrator point of view, the benefits that this new solution can bring to their identity management approach, I would say, in some sense.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit, and please, if you want to go back to and talk a little bit more about the benefits and the advantages of Olympus, please feel free to do so. But it's very clear that security has been front of mind. It's also very clear that privacy has been very front of mind. What about usability? Because that's another big area that we need to be focused in on in our efforts. And I just would, be curious about where does usability stand in the work that's happening inside of Olympus, and how does the progress appear to be at this moment?
Yep. Yeah, and I think that, as I already mentioned, that is also, I think, is quite important, because at the end, you can create the best solution or the best secure solution, but if no one is able to use it, you will have a big problem, I would say, in some sense.
Yeah.
Indeed, one of the reasons when we start with this project was because, just as a curiosity, because when we start, one of the main partners of this project is IBM, where they already implement or design and implement a solution about privacy preserving that's called IDMX many years ago. And one of the most, I would say, critics that they have about this solution that was quite important, quite relevant, was one of the first privacy preserving identity management mechanisms that were already created. But the problem was that was not used in some sense. There was lack of usability on the tools, on the mechanisms to be integrated in existing solution, no, in real solution, no. So it's about the complexity. It's a problem of the complexity of the technology in some sense. Obviously, this process has evolved. In some sense, we take from there, and this is one of the objectives, to take from the technical ideas on the theoretical, I would say, the design of the solution, and what we already have tried to make it much more easy to be used, much more easy to be integrated, and that's why one of the scenarios that we are envisioning, no, just to demonstrate this usability, is how to integrate this on the mobile driver license use case. Basically, we have two use cases I already mentioned. One of them that is quite important is the mobile driver license. It's important because, I mean, in many countries, they don't have electronic ID, and the only way to identify a user is using the driver license in some sense, no? Like in some Anglo-Saxon countries, basically. And basically, what the main idea was to get something that is very used, I would say, on the context of the identification of the user, how we can integrate clearly on that mechanism the possibility to have this kind of technology. No? So basically, the main idea is that we have an extension over the mobile driver license, so that where you are able to interact with the police, if you're talking about something that you want to identify yourself, or if you want to interact with the vending machine, or if you want to interact with service provider, where basically you can use the same mechanism that you are going to use just in order to identify yourself, but with the additional possibility that on that process of identification, you can decide which of your attributes can be shown, can be presented to this entity, this service provider, this person, etc. So, for example, if we are talking about that you want to buy something and you want to demonstrate that you are above 18, you don't need to provide all the information about your date, or the date of birth, I don't know where you live, etc. But the only thing is that you need to demonstrate that you are above 18, and this is just the only thing that it's needed in some sense, no?
Yeah.
So this is the kind of usability at the end that we're to integrate the technology inside procedures, mechanisms, and I would say and services that or application. In this case, for example, using the mobile because basically the mobile driver license is going to be part of the mobile your mobile device. So to make it this simple, the only difference is that giving the power to the end user to have more control about what is being presented or disclosed. This is the minimum disclosed aspect of the solution, to control what you want to disclose about yourself based on who is the service, for what is the service, or what the service is asking you. I was about that is needed in some sense. So this is the part of the system that we are quite interested on demonstrating and make part of the final solution. So to really facilitate that this technology can be extended and can be used in the normal operation that the people will have in the virtual world. I would say in some sense.
Okay. And I know because, again, Olympus has its roots in a European undertaking, the Horizon 2020 program. I'm just curious about how much conversation has happened inside of Olympus, the Olympus project, or maybe how much conversation has happened inside of Horizon 2020, where the things that are being worked on, there is a vision that it has value beyond Europe, because EIDAS is absolutely a very European program. And what we're talking about is something that has value throughout all of the EU. My mind jumps to, and done in a particular way, has value around the planet. So can you talk a little bit about what the long-term aspirations may be?
Absolutely right. In the sense that this is one of I would say the things that now we are trying to work until the end of the project. No, so we are actually at the end. We are in the last 6 or 7 months of the project, I would say, and now we need to take care about not about the technology. We have the technology. We have, by the way, we have in our website, we have most of the code available because we are following open source approach. So if any of you is interested to check and validate or use it in other contexts different to the one that we have, we are quite happy about that, because basically we want to receive the feedback in that sense. So now what we are doing is the final process to try to identify what you said, like the business strategy that we can have about that in the sense. No? And one of the most important thing that we want to have is hopefully after the summer, so it will be September, October, depending on the process, is to have like a workshop where we invite you, and we will invite any of the person that can be interested and that will see this interview to participate on the workshop, because what we want is to find a way to look for this kind of possible synergies on different sectors. So as already mentioned, although we already have tackled some use cases, we understand that this is much more global. I mean, we need to be to other areas where this technology can be used. And now we want to find possible collaboration and possible new initiative where we can try to embed this solution in order to be how they can be applied in some sense. No? So for that, we are now trying to start the dissemination process or communication, I would say more than dissemination, of the results, trying to get on board different stakeholders, basically through this workshop, through seminars, a webinar, etc., so that we can identify areas of collaboration and possible areas of application of our solution as a way also to make it sustainable, the result of the project. We understand, as I already mentioned, we are not thinking about making business in the sense of making money from it, but we want to be more on the way of a solution like this one need to have a continuity after the end of the project. We want to continue the development, improve certain functionality, make them more some part more, I would say, from the performance point of view, maybe to increase the result or to improve the result. Sorry, but for that we need to find also, I mean, this kind of collaboration. So we are quite interested on this possible connection to different stakeholders, and one of the idea also, for example, last 2 years ago we were in the AID forum, that is a quite known forum, no, about identity management, where we present, I think, what was the first year or the first yes, it was the first year of the project. And we want also to try to bring this kind of exercise to this kind of forums also, and so that we can identify, as already mentioned, different areas or sector where we can collaborate on in order to push this relation. Just to mention one example, I mean, we already have been discussing, for example, in the area of the identification in the airports, for example, is a quite similar, I would say, the area where if you are inside the airport, for example, when you use the boarding pass, you are using you are providing a lot of information about yourself, your name, where you are going, and in many interactions that you have in the airport, and they request you about the boarding, etc. I mean, it's only just to know that you are traveling, nothing else, not where you are traveling, where's your name, or what is the company that you are using. So there's and there obviously the privacy preserving part is quite important. No? So it could be very simple scenario, but where basically we can try to apply this technology also on the kind of this context, I would say.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. I personally have been working in and around the topic of and the subject of identity management since 1997. And we didn't call it identity management back in 1997, but that is effectively what we were doing. And what I find interesting is we have progressed as a planet. And by the way, all of this is just my opinion, but we've progressed as a planet where we seem to be doing a better job, and we're making progress on the security front. We're making progress on the privacy front. We're making there is progress that's happening, but there's still so many separate efforts, and there's still so many separate things that are going on that I wrestle with. We're missing out on being able to collaborate with each other. And should we collaborate so closely that we get to sort of this one system that has everything kind of integrated into it, then we're really going to have problems. And so I don't know. Again, in your role as a professor and in the work that you've been doing, if you've wrestled with with any of these, I would call this a conundrum. It's the idea that we could benefit, and there could be positives that happen if there's closer coordination. For example, I spent a career working in and around the driver licensing community of North America, and then in the work I did for them around the planet in standards work. I quickly became friends with my counterparts that were doing work in the travel document world. And there were many similarities between what we were doing in the driver licensing world and what was being done in the travel document world, but there's also differences. So at some point, it would be nice if we were leveraging our collaboration for the benefits that it would deliver on everybody, regardless of sector, regardless of application, and at the same time be mindful that we don't want to create a new set of problems. So I was hoping that I could kind of round out our interview, and I really have two questions left. And the first question is just simply, what was the aha for you in the work that you've been doing with Olympus? So like, what are the one or two things that really stood out as being surprising or interesting or provocative? What would they be?
It's difficult. For me, when in principle, when we started with the project, I would say, I really thought that the problem could be easily to be solved. I would say in some sense.
Okay.
Just to make it very simple. Either if it's a research project, you always have in mind maybe some approach, because basically what you already proposed, you have something. But once we start with the definition of the architecture and how to be able to, without changing too much of the environment, if you like, of the management, how to provide a solution to really cope with this kind of scenario of the privacy preserving. I was really surprised. I was said in some sense, your aha. I say, here we have an issue. I was said in some sense, in the sense that as you were mentioned, how to be able to manage the complexity of the problem that is behind the privacy preserving mechanism, and the technology and the crypto aspect, the algorithmic part, if you like, that is needed in order to really create a secure and I would say sound solution in the context of scenarios that at the end you say, okay, they should seem simple. I would say the same. They should be usable. I would say in some sense. So that trade-off is quite I would say exciting, because it's obliged you to do some kind of exercise in many cases in order to identify trade-off of whatever I mentioned about. Maybe you cannot provide the most efficient solution, but you need to provide something that really could be good enough, but at the same time, or correct enough, if you like, more than good, that at the same time should be usable and be really something that can be understand or can be used by third party. In the sense, this is one. This I would say is one of the first things. I was really upset, no, from the beginning of the project. That I mean, and the other one is a little bit what you were saying, is that how difficult is, I would say, as you mentioned, in the actual context, I would say, of the standardization and the interoperability world of solution, to be able to reach agreement, I would say, in different areas. I would say, because as you mentioned, if you think about identity management, it's like it's not a silo at the end. It's something that could be a facilitator for other, I would say, sectors, economic sectors. But then when you go to the different economic sectors, I would say, in different, either if we're talking about energy, if you're talking about, I mean, smart cities, for example. Now we are involved in a project about smart cities and privacy preserving for the citizen. At the end, it's not always the same idea, as you mentioned. No, it's again, there's some particularities. I would say the restriction, if you like, in some sense, and it makes quite difficult in many cases to make this process to be smoothly transit, no, from one sector to another in that sense. So this is, I think, it's something that is, and it is getting, I will not say getting more and more complex, because I mean the society in general is evolving at the same time, and because of the digitalization, more and more the things are the same. But still, I would say there's some kind of barriers, if you like, from sector to sector, from areas to area, in order to facilitate this flow. That they say, come on, guys, this is. I mean, we're talking about this. As you said, we're talking about the same. Call it A or call it a B, or how do you like it? But we're talking about the same. But I think that this is still the one of the things that are slowly, I would say, that, and maybe, and I'm sorry, and just to conclude, for me, it is the end user, it is the citizen, if you like, the one that need to start forcing, I would say, or pushing in the direction to make this transition, or this intercommunication, osmosis between the different sectors, start happening more quickly, I would say, in some sense, because the user is getting more and more aware about this difference aspect, but at the end, they cannot understand why he needs to have a certain kind of management of their identity when we are talking about the energy company, or when they are talking about with the city, if they want to do something on their city hall and so on. So they, come on, guy, I mean, I am the same guy. I'm me, and I want to have independently where am I want to be in charge of my information and be able to interact with you, but as me, not as the different. That's what we call virtual identities, no? Because at the end, I need to create different identities, virtual identities of myself, for different service, for different sectors, and that make it not to sense. I want to be myself, me, in all the case, and then I decide how I interact with you. It's the other way around. No? It's to put the power on the user, not the power on the service provider, I would say, or identity provider.
Yeah, no, that's a good way of summarizing that. And so Antonio, maybe for our last question, and I plan, just so you don't feel like you're being singled out, I plan on asking every future guest this same question. So this is very monumental, that I'm establishing now a tradition that I plan to carry through with all of our future guests here at SCY Studios. But the last question is this: if you were emperor for a day, and you could make any decisions and make any changes you would possibly want to make to any of the things that you've been working on, and it was just as easy as saying it and it would happen, what's the one thing you would really, really like to see happen or see change with the work that you're involved in?
Well, I will. It's not so. I mean, from one day, one decision, but the decision is going to be maintained independent of that day. It could be forever.
Yeah. Well, so I'll give you a for instance. For me, one of the things that I would love to have is a better. And by the way, I mean I have to again put out the disclaimer. This is a personal opinion.
Personal opinion.
So this is not the opinion of my employer. This is not the opinion of my friends. This is just my opinion. I would love to solve the problem that exists in North America, where for most people, we have to try to figure out who they are when they turn around the age of 16. Basically, when they're eligible for a driving license is when we really first have to try to sort out who are they. Because they come in with paper documents and they come in with things that don't actually connect to the person. And so it's something that has always bothered me, that I understand that there's large percentages of people that are honest, and when they provide a piece of paper and says, this is my vital statistic that shows that I was born on this day in this hospital or under these circumstances, and then the other supporting documentation, my point is, it's not always dependable. It's not always connected to them. And so in my identity management work, I've spent a lot of time analyzing all of the fraud that happens. And part of the work that I've been involved in is directly connected to law enforcement and fraud investigation. And so if I could just wave a wand and fix something immediately, that's what I would want to fix. The moment a person basically enters the world, we know who they are and can lock in that identity in a way that accomplishes all of the things that we're actually talking about. So that from that point forward, and of course, you know, now we're getting a little philosophical here, that a baby can't make decisions for itself, but a parent certainly can. And a parent can be the one to determine how much information they want to share and with who. But from the very beginning, working its way through life, there is a more dependable, more solid process that you're leaning into versus being at the mercy of paper documents. So that's just my example. And I was curious if you had one.
Yeah, no. It's good your point. I mean, your point, because I mean, it's have to do also with the capability of doing traceability, basically, of all the fact of life that was been, in some sense, has been called in that sense. And the issue is that many times up to now is so for me, my wish, if you like, to have there is to how to digitalize all that process. I would say this.
Okay.
How to be able to, because I mean, I'm just to put you an example, is also is personal issue. No, I born in Chile, so I'm Chilean, but also I am Spanish, basically because of my father is Spanish. And do you know the amount of work that implies for me? Where every time I need to present certain document, because I mean I need to ask it. I mean, in some case through the embassy. Another one is because I was registered in a national registry that is different from other. So I mean, the possibility, as you mentioned, to link to the identity, to one identity, when one identity that you say you're all the fact of life associated to you that should be digitalized, and basically that you can extract and connect your identity with all of them, and at the same time being able to, as I already mentioned, being able to control by yourself, not depend on third parties, basically, in some sense. So right. I would like to say, okay, I am me. I want to say I am Antonio Skarmeta, and this is here is my backpack with all my information, digitalized obviously, but by my back, and not depend on third party in that sense. And in that way, this is part of the self-sovereignty identity solution that now is, I would say, is part of also this envision. No? So I am able to recreate my story of life, basically, and my documentation and my information based on my capability to have or digitalize all that process. No, for me that and link it with this privacy part that I already mentioned. No? So I am the owner, I am back, take this with me, and I'm able to decide in each moment what part of it I present to whom and for what. I was
Right.
and not depend on third parties
Sure.
and asking for, I mean, for the document, it's a paper one, and that someone need to put a stamp there. Come on, guys, this is
Right.
actually in the actual world. I mean, I hope that in the future, not our kids will need again to come to this process, I would say.
Right, I agree, and again, given the fact that I feel like the clock, the way it ticks, I'm coming up on 24 years of working in and around the topic of identity management. We definitely have made progress, but there's also lots and lots and lots of work yet to be done. And so, as you wrap the Olympus project over the next 6 to 9 months, we certainly wish you the very best. And I absolutely look forward to the workshop that you talked about. We'll be sure to put up the website that people can go to register for that as more information becomes available. And I want to thank you for taking the time to come on the show and to visit with me. And in the future, we want to have you back. And hopefully I haven't scared you off bad enough that you wouldn't be willing to come back and have another chat with me in the future.
Perfectly. I mean, it had been a pleasure. It had been, I was very glad all the conversation. I think it's this kind of format, I would say, is quite interesting because really, I mean, it's not about technical. It's more about, I mean, describing basically the objective of the project or the work, and in a friendly way. So I hope also that the audience later can be interested on and come to our website, as I already mentioned, to see what has been our publication, our result, and more specifically important, as I already mentioned, we already have all our source code available. So you can, if you are interested, we are quite happy to help and to collaborate on possible usage and feedback that you can provide about the actual solution.
Well, Antonio, thank you again. It was really a pleasure having you on, and we'll look forward to seeing how Olympus wraps. And we know that it's going to do great things, and we look forward to staying in touch with you.
Many thanks.
Thank you.